Yeah. Sounds like
I don't think he's not hearing us at all, but
Adam's not hearing us?
yeah.
James? James can hear us? James can hear us.
Maybe Adam should.
Adam can hear us
Oh,
now.
okay.
Okay. That's a good way then.
so. Adam's ready, you're ready. Thank you, everybody, for being here. And for joining us from as far away as Hawaii. Thank you. It's not on the agenda, but the first item is our land acknowledgement. Since Bowen Island was incorporated as a municipality at the very end of the 20th century, settler society has learned many sad facts and has begun to face uncomfortable truths. We've pledged to do better than our parents did. Our naming, programs, and language are becoming inclusive. Of course, Nohellam's other organizations and residents are also working at both truth and reconciliation. Our challenge is to normalize this inclusion and to constantly check in to ensure that we're not marginalizing anyone for reasons of gender, orientation, race, culture, or religion. We're making progress, but of course we can and will do better. Our municipality exists in the still unceded territory of the Squamish Nation. Progress towards a greater reconciliation of that occupation is slow. However, the municipality and its OCP steering committee are committed to working to support and enhance the relationships and understanding that will be vital to working through the acknowledgement of the past and the intentional progress towards a better future. Next on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. Does anybody have anything to add as a late addition to the agenda, please?
You're going to ensure that item number 5.1
Right.
includes a pronoun conservancy component. Bricks maybe would feed that?
Yep. Yeah, I think you should speak to that.
What are we adding under 5.1 and how to follow?
It's not a big change. We just want to take this opportunity to ensure that we don't miss the Bowen Island Conservancy piece in 5.1.
Any other discussion? Nothing from Zoom? Okay, so then we need someone to move and then we will vote on adopting the draft agenda. Thank you, Betty. Anyone opposed? No. That's okay. Thanks, Glenn. All right, carried unanimously. Let's move on. Item 2, adoption of the minutes. Of course, everybody has poured through the draft minutes from our last meeting. Any corrections, questions, clarifications? Anything? Okay, so then we need as well a motion for that to approve the draft minutes. Thank you, Fritz. Anyone opposed? Seeing no one, that too is carried unanimously. Turn the page. Public comments.
No one in the room
And no one in Zoom? Is that right?
correct.
Wonderful, thank you. Moving on again. Boy, we'll be done in a minute now. Item number 4, the OCP update progress report. I'll hand the microphone over to Daniel.
Yeah, so what we brought here was the first thing we brought was the agenda and the slides from our January 28th meeting. And partly that's here to give you recollection of what we talked about, what was presented at that meeting, and also for anyone who's following along with the progress of the OCP steering committee. We wanted to ensure that we were having that on the agenda and having it recorded so people following along can know what we talked about in topics and other. And then the other piece provided, thanks, Fred. Here was that progress report, so showing tasks completed and still in progress.
So I'm just zipping through these slides so the public can see what was included in the workshop and know that it's linked to the public agenda of this meeting. That's the progress report, Daniel, sorry.
Do you want me to put it up or do you?
Oh, you can put it up, sure. Give it over.
Just this overarching piece that we put together just to show friendly phase one, moving into phase two, they did gathering ideas and exploring options. So phase one tasks are mostly complete. The last piece that's outstanding is this engagement and communication plan that I know Sandra and Victoria are eager to talk to us about. And then phase two, some of that stuff, McElhaney has also started, so they're preparing engagement materials, the setup and testing the online engagement tools. And then obviously the big pieces in phase two not yet started, so the big broad engagement, and engagement report, and the draft vision goals, emergency policy options, formulating scenarios and options, all in phase two. Giving sort of a general overview, you can see lots of pieces not yet started, but let's just start tracking as we go. So we'll try to bring this each time so you can get an overall sense of where we are in the process. Yeah, so if anyone has any questions on that, we could delve into it more.
Not seeing any.
Okay.
That's the extent.
That's it.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
All right, moving on then. Item number 5.1, engagement and communication plan update and discussion, which I think we're handing over to Sandy.
Hi, everyone. I can start us off here. So for those who don't know, or those from the members of the public who might be joining, my name is Victoria Venner. I'm a planner for McElhaney, who's a consultant brought on by Bowen Island to help update the OCP. And I'm also joined by my colleague, Sandra Borton. So our team last spoke to the OCPSC in January when we had a workshop, and we hosted an in-depth discussion on the upcoming OCP engagement. At the workshop, we ran out of time to complete a participant mapping exercise with your group to collect feedback on who should be engaged throughout the OCP update process. So we converted that activity to an online format. Shortly after the workshop, Daniel shared 2 online activities with your group that we put together, which included a survey to collect feedback on the engagement interest holders and a mapping exercise to collect feedback on areas where we could host a pop-up engagement, locations where we could place in community signage or advertisements, locations where events might be held, and areas where you think that people might feel a little bit more disconnected, and maybe we could find ways to do some extra outreach to bring those folks from those areas into the process. So today, Sandra and I are going to focus on sharing the results from the survey and the mapping activity with you. Now that we have this information collected, our next step ahead of your March meeting will be to draft the communications and engagement plan and be prepared to share that draft with you at your March meeting. So I will just share my screen here and I'll have up the survey results. Right, I believe that is sharing now.
Can you make it bigger?
Is that possible on your end, Steph? I'm not sure if I can.
Would you give it the 3 little buttons at the top right of your screen?
Kind of zoom in a little bit.
Or the top right, all the above that?
She did just zoom in.
At the very, very, very top of the screen on the right-hand side, just below the X.
Where it says, yeah, bookmarks and like a reverse hamburger.
Oh yeah.
She is doing the same.
Oh, sorry.
Is that better?
Yep.
Yeah.
Size? Okay. So the first question asked if which government partners should be engaged. So I'll just, you can see the bar graph there, but it summarizes the data below here. So BC Ferries and TransLink received a 100% response rate. So there was a lot of feedback that those are groups that should be engaged with. Islands Trust, municipal staff, and emergency services received about 55 to 66% support. And telecommunications companies received the least amount of support at 33%. Question 2 asked which special interest groups, community associations, or community services should be engaged. And we pulled this list of just ideas from previous feedback that we received from a couple of the committee members. So the list is pretty extensive. And the results showed that there are several organizations, including developers, Bowen Island Resilient Community Housing, neighborhood associations and stratas, service industries, tourism Bowen Island, and Bowen Waste Solutions that all received a high amount of support at 78%. And there was also a common trend in the data that seemed to be around hobby and interest groups maybe being they didn't receive quite as much support from the group to engage with specifically. So a lot of those groups such as Bowen Island Baseball, BC Yacht Club, Bowen Island Football, Bowen Swim, etc., received just over 11% support. And I'll also just note too that this doesn't necessarily mean that those organizations aren't given a chance to engage, because there'll be several opportunities for all members of the public to engage, but it's just looking at targeted approaches to engage certain groups. So question 3 asks which specific demographics of people should be engaged. And full-time residents who are homeowners or renters and part-time residents who are homeowners received 100% support, while part-time residents who are renters received a little bit less support. And visitors received the least support at 22%. So question 4 asked, are there any other groups or individuals who should be engaged? And we got some suggestions to engage with young adults aged 20 to 30. There was also a great suggestion to consult all businesses on Bowen rather than targeting specific businesses, because we really want to take an equitable approach where everyone has an opportunity. And also potentially breaking them down into storefront businesses versus home-based businesses. Squamish Nation was mentioned, and also those who live and work on Bowen versus those who live on Bowen but commute for work and school elsewhere. And also some other Bowen Island municipality committees and equity deserving communities. So the final question was, why do you feel that the identified participants or groups are important to engage on the project? And responses included collecting input from all age groups and income levels, holding group engagement sessions where similar groups are invited to one meeting to create equity and avoid accidentally excluding a specific group, engaging with Squamish Nation because they're right holders to the land, engaging with those most active in land use, those who are underserved and often engaged with less, developers that are specific to Bowen Island projects, and those who live here and provide essential services, as well as anyone else who is interested in engaging on the project. So that's the summary of what we received. We received 9 responses total, so I think it was most members of the committee, but we might have been missing a couple. So I just wanted to provide an opportunity for any final feedback that wasn't collected through the survey. If anyone else has something to add, they're welcome to. I won't be able to really moderate the speakers because I can't see everybody in the camera view, but I will be recording anything that you have to share. And feel free to just speak up.
Yeah. Councillor Morse.
I guess one of the things I found frustrating with the survey was I don't think I was able to print and save my responses.
Okay.
And, you know, so now I can't remember what I said. So anyhow, are we going to get the actual data, the actual responses?
The
Because you're
detail-
summarizing what the, the comments were and whatever, so are we actually gonna be the actual, summary, including all the, not response by response, but the list of all the comments, which I assume you have somewhere?
I don't see a problem with sharing that. It's just feedback that we received from your group.
Yeah.
There were just the responses that are kind of on the list on the screen, so there wasn't tons of the open-ended responses, but yes, I can make a note to share this.
Eddie?
I found that extremely hard to hear and I couldn't see the slides, so I'm feeling a little blind here, but I feel like the list it's not alphabetical and it seems like a proxy for content that's not stated. And so I don't feel like any one of those items might be relevant to different groups for different parts of the OCP. And I wasn't feeling comfortable that the list really gave us important information about who we're talking to about what. And I think, I can't say for sure because it's hard to find things, but I think we missed some really important people like the Community Foundation, who have a lot of experience with trying to figure out how to reach out into the Bowen community and might be able to help us find tools. We have people, well, I think you saw Fritz's late item, whether it's the Bowen Conservancy or the biodiversity topic or the community forest project. There's a bunch of things that are maybe not formal Bowen communities, but they're kind of under that umbrella of who we are as a community and what are some of the things we're facing that I don't think there was a place for. So I'm feeling really uncomfortable with it at this point.
Yeah, I apologize that it was difficult to hear and
Sorry,
see.
Victoria, I've just turned you up. Is that better, Betty? I've turned the volume up a little bit.
Okay.
Sorry. Victoria, go ahead.
The list that was provided was definitely a starting point. So we want to hear from you about, groups or committees that are maybe missing that should be included for sure. So maybe we can coordinate with Daniel to see if there's a way to collect any additional groups who we should be taking note of.
I think that goes with the sharing of the data, that then Eddie and others will be able to see the responses and see what fits and what doesn't. Sorry, not what doesn't fit, but what's missing. My question, Victoria, was, given the experience of your firm, is there anything you feel is missing from that?
I think that, no glaringly obvious gaps. I think from here, it really goes into designing the action plan through the communications and engagement strategy, because what we'll do is we'll look at this data that's collected and we'll be able to design, especially the pop-up engagement locations and opportunities around this, so that we can make sure that there's opportunities for not just specific groups that we mentioned here today, but for all different people and demographics, and those with all different schedules and abilities in the community will have an opportunity. So it's more about, I think, from here, designing a strategy that provides a really equitable opportunity. So yeah, so for example, if we want to provide opportunities to young families, we might set up an event somewhere where parents are already taking their kids, but that's obviously not probably a great time and location for those who work, because that's probably during the day. So we just take those factors into account and try to make sure that there's opportunities for as many different people as possible. Mm-hmm.
Did you want to catch Melanie somewhere here?
Sure. There's been a survey, a bunch of results.
Yes.
rather predictable results, I think, but hopefully we're going to be able to see all of the results and the comments that went with them. So you won't miss anything.
Great.
You've missed all the procedural stuff too. And Daniel bringing us up to date on the progress of the committee, but you've been there. Other than that, I think you're good.
Okay, thank you.
So can we
Allison.
just clarify that we will be sent the full results that can be distributed to all the committee members?
Victoria
Yeah.
nodded.
Yes, do that.
Okay. Are there other questions or comments for Victoria? So then I'll hand the floor back to you, basically.
Okay. In that case, I will let Sandra take over for a little bit to share the mapping activity results.
Hello, everyone. So you all also had a chance to experiment with our mapping tool called Vertice as part of this digital experiment. And we are curious to hear your feedback on that, but I wanted to go through some of the results that we received from the Vertice tool. And we asked 4 questions. We asked for locations that we should do a pop-up or locations that there might be events that we should know about that we could piggyback onto. We asked for locations that would be good signage, places to put signage or posters advertising the OCP process, something that might be able to have a QR code link so that someone could link to the survey or find out about other parts of the OCP process or other pop-up events or engagement opportunities. We also asked about areas that we want to make sure that we reach, so outlying residents and that all got populated onto our Vertice map, which I can share the screen here to show you.
Can you exit, please, Victoria?
I should be able to take right over here, I think. Can everyone see the map of Bowen on their screen? Yeah, awesome. So, oh, I didn't hear that.
Just seeing if we could get better visuals for committee members at this end, but it's totally fine. Okay. Please continue.
Excuse me. So the Vertice tool, these are the 4 pins, and you're able to select a pin and then drop it onto the map with 2 clicks and then add comment. So I'll just go through some of the feedback that we received. We had 33 data entries and we had pop-up locations. We had multiple suggestions for pizza night at the shed. So I think that was very likely to make the list. That seems like a popular option. And when I Googled it and looked at their Instagram, it does seem like a very busy location. So this is a good suggestion for a pop-up location. We want to interact with lots of people. The library made the list a few times, the Bowen Legion, and the suggestion of tagging on to the Strawberry Social in May, the Children's Center, Artisan Square, the new community center, the farmers market, the soccer club, early building supply, West Side Fire Hall, and there was a note that there might be events there. So we will make sure that we look that up. And Bowen Bay Beach were all suggested as pop-up locations or locations where events are held. We did get some signage locations, so suggestions for putting signage at the post office boxes and post box clusters, NERP shelters, the library, Hood Points Residents Association Park, the recycle center, the community school. Oh, what was that?
It's not the park, it's No Wall Hall.
Okay, I will make a note of that.
Absolutely great.
At Hood Point.
Yeah.
Okay. The recycle center, the Bowen Island Community School, the walk-on waiting area for the ferry, and there's a clubhouse board at Tunstall Bay Community Association.
Yeah.
So we'll do up a series of posters that have links and advertise the OCP process, and we'll try to get them to as many of these locations. Some of them might require a little bit of coordination. Sometimes the like notice boards have locks on them or they're managed. So we'll coordinate that to make sure that we
Yeah.
can get some posters into all these locations. And then it was just a
Sandra?
few.
Sorry?
Yeah.
Sorry, just one that was missed was the bulletin board on the ferry itself would be a great place for commuters.
I will add that to the list right now. Okay.
And the waiting area in Horseshoe Bay.
Okay.
There needs to be somebody like that. See the one in Horseshoe Bay, I'll go on the side.
That's a question. Like, are all signs the same, or is it like certain posters you read and they're in locations where you stand and read? I can see that if you come off the ferry with a car and at the intersection is a big sign and it says, "Hey, you guys, OCP reviewing programs," and somehow that draws people in without having to stop or anything.
Banner across the road down there.
Yeah, but the corner is hardly, where all the only political signs are.
Oh, sorry, you guys, I can only pick up one person at a time. So yeah, really what the question here is, and our communications and engagement plan will detail, the question is, how do we advertise the OCP process? So we do find that posters are quite effective because we can get them into lots of places. There's all sorts of other things that we can do. We can't do them all, but we can choose from things like road banners, sandwich boards, and really it's about advertising. So there's printed spaces to do that in community, and then there's digital spaces that we can do that as well. And so this has been good. This exercise has been insightful for us to understand where we can put physical location. We often find that posters can be quite effective, like I say, because we can get them into lots of places. They're easy, they don't take up much space, and they don't require much coordination or maintenance. But yeah, happy to definitely include if there is a location that would typically have advertising banners for other events, we can look at that. If there's indoor locations where we can put larger size posters, happy to do that too. And on those larger size posters, we can also include more information about what the process is, what the OCP is, what it does, based on the size available to us.
Could we do balloons by any chance? Because it early hands out balloons, and we could do balloons at both us. Like, it would be a fun way to.
A balloon with a QR code on it. We get a lot of pushback from helium-filled balloons probably, but
Yeah, but they don't always hands out balloons to kids. I just thought maybe that might be a fun way to.
Oh, balloons that aren't blown up. Or are they blown up?
They're blown up. Like, early give them free balloons to kids when they come in and show,
Oh, I haven't had our youngest one with me ever, so that.
But or Bow Fest or something, I just thought that might be a fun way to have this thing bobbing along.
well, in a BowFest booth for sure.
So I don't know if you remember talking at our workshop, we talked about this idea of animation. And what you're describing is how we animate the process and we make it big and visible and fun and interactive. So I have noted balloons. We will certainly have some other suggestions for animation as well, but that's part of how we gain visibility in the community. And that part of the process really relies on community champions. So yourselves and other champions in the community who can share the OCP process. And we encourage lots of fun ways to do that. So we'll definitely make some notes in the C&E plan around animation and how it relates to advertising the process itself. Yeah,
Well, I'll
absolutely.
volunteer for balloon duty.
Noted, thank you.
Melanie Mason.
Yeah, he's suggesting you have to.
I'm up for that, don't worry.
And you've got a few volunteers you're gonna volunteer, right?
So those are the results from the Vertice tool. And my questions for you are, I have one question for you around what your experience was with the Vertice tool. It is just one tool in our toolkit for surveying folks and gathering information about the community. What did you like about it? What did you not like about it?
You want feedback on the mapping exercise? I thought it was brilliant. I just thought it cut through a lot of, we could have sat around and done this on paper. I just thought it was a really efficient way of getting everybody's ideas down on paper. I really liked it.
Awesome.
It was easy to use, I thought, and my only problem with the map you've got up there right now is I think it's different from the map. It looks different from the map I actually put the pins on. Like streets and stuff aren't showing, so it's hard to tell where those places are.
Yeah, that is, if we zoom in, you'll see all those street names.
Yeah. And then could you go back to the west side of the island? They're overlaid, so, there's okay, so I'm guessing that red spot on the top left there is the new park at the Ridge,
Arbutus Ridge?
Arbutus Ridge,
The west side,
the west side playground.
The comment talks about beach access.
Yeah, but it's way up. Yeah, I'm trying to figure out just where that is.
Global warming, that will be the beach.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if that's, I tried to do one at the West Side Fire Hall, and I had
I got
trouble
that one.
placing and deleting, but that might be what that is.
And then is Tunstall Bay, scroll down a little bit. Yeah, you do have a red, because they were all stacked one on top of the other, it was hard to see. Yeah, and the fire hall isn't there. I
did
think.
get a comment for the fire hall, so it is noted in the locations and events. The fire hall is noted.
Yeah, so go slightly to the right on your screen.
It's to the east.
Alex, please.
I think it's there. Yeah.
Couldn't really place the pins. Wasn't really place the pins accessibly, so definitely need to come up with some kind of alternative activity to do.
Okay.
And more than happy to kind of work through some of the challenges either here at the meeting or afterwards. More than happy to make stuff available to you.
That sounds good. Thanks, Alex. I know that's in line with what we chatted about before, and I'm glad you got a chance to experiment with this.
And it's nothing against the process. I think it's a very valuable tool. I just think having an alternative to it could be a helpful thing to do.
Okay, yeah, awesome. And we've got some ideas, but I'd love to hear yours as well. So we will definitely touch base on that. Any other feedback of what we liked or did not like about the Vertice tool?
So this would be a tool that the general public would be using to pick where they might want to see things, or as a way of gathering input during the consultation process?
Yeah, absolutely. So we deploy this tool in various contexts. So when we look at the questions that we want and need to ask for the OCP process, some of those might best be asked spatially. So that's where we would bring in this tool. We use this for mountain bike trail planning. We use this for community services planning. The tool is very customizable. So once we understand what questions we want to ask the public or need to ask the public as we dive into policy analysis, then we look at which of those questions need to be represented geospatially. I see a hand up in the Zoom screen here. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. I see the value from a spatial perspective, but I also think that we got to be careful that there's going to be a lot of things that are big picture, whole community, policy based that this is not going to lend itself to. And so I'm not poo-pooing this, but I'm just saying it might be interesting to see how, if there's other kind of more dynamic or graphical ways to represent that. For example, if we're talking about total population growth, this isn't, are we going to say more population here? Like, I mean, it kind of gets, you got to be careful of what you ask for. So I'm just sort of raising that as a, it could be, I don't want to say it, gimmicky. You know what I mean?
Yeah, understood. Yeah, we try to match the data collection method with essentially the data that we need. We try to be very careful about using the right tools. We don't want to end up doing it, even doing a survey. A survey isn't the right tool in all applications, and it might not yield us the right data set, the data set that will answer the questions that we have. So we start with our questions first. What do we need to answer in order to update the policy, in order to make these changes? And then we look at the tools that will get us those answers. And then we put that through an equity and accessibility lens to make sure that the tool reaches the people that need to answer that question, and that they can, and that we create the right space for full participation. So
Good.
yeah,
Okay.
definitely
I
a
like that.
design question there in terms of matching the right data set to the tool. And this is just one tool. It is a very interactive tool, so it tends to be quite popular. And it's always nice to sort of hear the experiences of folks that are using it, because it's a very customizable tool. I am forever discovering what Vertice can do, and our GIS techs are forever emailing me ideas with this tool. So it's really great to hear your feedback. And I certainly will. We can actually change out, the users can change out the base map styles, but I can also set the default base map style. So I can do that. Just, I saw that comment there around making it clearer and just a little cleaner. We can certainly set it up that way. Yeah.
Yeah. And I imagine as well, oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
And I imagine as well that, like you were saying, that users do like to engage with it. It becomes a bit of a tool where we know that not everything is going to be spatially based, but it might get us in to get them involved so that we can get at some other meatier things, or not meatier, or other things that aren't spatially based. And so I do appreciate that as well.
There was a comment from Adam, who I think is audio constrained at this point, but I think oh, you're there. Great. And then Fritz.
Yeah, actually just a couple quick comments. And I think, Sandra, you already kind of mentioned that users would be able to toggle between the different map styles. And I found the ortho just a little, like the street names were tough to see over top of the ortho. They're quite small. So maybe in terms of accessibility, if you can increase that, but that's all kind of nitpicky stuff. I think really great complementary to a survey. Like I imagine we'll be doing some online surveys, and I think it is really good in giving that spatial sense to some of the questions. Like you can have more text-based questions in the survey that are more drawn out or ask for a different type of response, but having the complementary visual side to it, I think that we found that it's really quite helpful. And I might disagree with James on this one, but asking people about specific locations for growth, I think, is critically important. It's important to know, it will be important to know if people prefer that in the Cove or, green field development in those big forests there off Adams and like stuff like that. Like, I think that's going to be important for us. So I think it was great and super easy to use. I had one question though. How many different types of pins, unique pins, can you guys put in there? Like, is there a limit on that?
No, but there should be a limit on there. No, so we can create imprint pins. We can also create polygons and lines. So if we wanted to say like, where should we put a new park? Draw your new park. We can do that. Draw a line on your favorite preferred biking route from A to B. We can do that as well. And no, there are no limits, but there are limits to users' tolerance and enjoyment of the platform and how much they'll engage. So we usually try to keep it to what you can see on the screen on the right-hand side. Beyond that, it gets a bit much.
I had, sorry, just one more technical follow-up question. I know when we use these tools, sometimes it's difficult to link them from the larger text survey to the map. Like they're like two separate platforms. Can this be embedded in like the primary survey, or is it always going to be like a separate mapping exercise?
I believe that we can embed it. And if nothing else, we can embed a link.
Yeah, okay.
But I believe in the more current version, and we'll have to double check that.
Okay.
But yeah, and we should be able to do vice versa. We should be also able to include a link to the online survey right in that sidebar in the Vertice mapping platform and say, done with your Vertice, click on here to fill out the survey, and then someone can go over and fill out the other ones. Yeah, we really do try to create as much cross-referencing as possible, even between printed and digital materials, just so that people are aware of all of the options and places to give feedback and give input. And it just helps to show the size of the project as well.
Great, fantastic. Thank you.
Okay, Fritz has been very patient.
Yeah, okay, it's very entertaining, but I also thought that events and pop-ups, right? The word already suggests this. You have to be lucky to be there. It's a pop-up, right? So I thought maybe the steering committee should also have a home, like a base, like for instance in the community hall. Maybe there's a space that can be used and where a person can just walk in. Maybe once a week, somebody from the steering committee is there, or maybe, just to see if people have an interest. But I think it gives people, it kind of anchors it, like if you, like for instance, if there's a big sign at the Four Corners, you come up to the ferry, lots of people don't stop. They don't always look at posters that they should, they don't be there with it. But somehow if you make sure that they feel that there is also a place where they can just walk in, and talk to someone, like at their convenience, not at our convenience, when there's a pop-up. I also think there's a lot of people that live on an island that drive, go home, and don't participate as much as they maybe should.
Sandra and Victoria, does that bring us to the end of 5.1 for you? Because there was email discussion about adding one more item to that, which involves Fritz again. And if we can move on to that. Sorry, I'm asking if your part of that presentation is finished.
I think so, if there's no more questions. Yeah.
Thank you. So then Fritz emailed the group about natural neighborhoods.
Yeah, so the way this started, I went to a presentation which was, I think it was November last year, and it was from the Conservancy. And if you look at this publication from the Conservancy, right, you probably have seen this before. It is really amazing. And I went to the presentation and spent a few hours there. I spoke with everybody who had a presentation to make. And you may remember that in one of the meetings before, I said it would be nice if we can draw people more in and maybe on a neighborhood basis. I think this tool that you just discussed is actually doing that, right? So if something is relevant to the neighborhood, it doesn't mean that the OCP as it is written now is really distinguishing that. It is far, far more blanket, over the whole island. So what I thought is that, so then there was a meeting from the Conservancy and with the Bowen Island Municipality, with municipal staff. Danielle was in that meeting. And Danielle, you probably noticed how amazing is what they have to offer from research and from mapping. And the Conservancy, they don't want to get into a political exercise with the OCP, but they certainly have amazing mapping systems in place. And the planning department was overwhelmed by it, because you could see all kinds of things that they could illustrate it so clearly, And so then, so Bob asked me to participate in that meeting. I was not invited by the municipality, but by Bob Turner from the Conservancy, right? So Fritz, I wanted to be there, and I did, and I found it highly interesting. And the OCP was discussed to some degree. It was not on the agenda, but it was discussed to some degree. And so we started to think about that if a person lives in a man-made neighborhoods as you see now, they're fairly distinct. And then we started to see, when I met with Bob and John Dowler, and we sensed that there was a strong relationship between existing neighborhoods and environmental areas that are specific. And it started with this book, because if you look at it, it starts with Deep Bay, and then you go up the creek and you have the watersheds, so these kind of the heart of the island. I show you page 4. Okay, it's really interesting. So this map I found very inspiring. Like here it is, right? And you see the island, and in the middle where the dark green is, that's the heart of the island, which are basically 2 watersheds, and they combine to one as they come into. But if you follow that, then at a certain point, you look at the island, and I was sitting down with Bob Turner was really paying attention. He says, this is amazing. And then, because an island has a different climate and conditions on every side. Like, if you live in Hook Point, the climate where you live affects you. When you live on the south side, like,
It was sunny when I left home.
you're in a completely different environment, right? So what Bob noticed, and at a certain point, Bob said, oh, you mean natural environments? I said, shit, you got it, because the idea is that if you live somewhere, if you want it or not, you live in a specific environmental environment, and tons of things relate to that. If you look at the road system of Poland, it's already acknowledging it. And it's really unbelievable. So, and then if you look at the OCP that we view, right, like how many items, policies were related to the environment, something like 140 or so, right? So then what McElhaney said, well, there seemed to be always agreement about everything that's environmental. Like you can almost skip it because there's already consensus. But then I think, well, but if you now make people feel that they live in a neighborhood, and the neighborhood is also an environmental, natural neighborhood, and everything that relates to that, and you make people feel that where they live is relevant, you know what I mean? I think you draw people in. And like what you can see already with that mapping system is doing that already. Where do you put the dot? What's your concerns? What do you write in the billboard? So, but it's not for me to give the presentation, it's for the conservancy. So, it's just, I was thought from, like, I thought it was so amazing. And, that group of people, they have so much knowledge, but they limit themselves to research, mapping, data, and they don't really go into the political part where things may be implemented.
So the request is for the Conservancy to meet with
To
the
be invited,
steering
and
committee.
it's not a 5-minute presentation. You have to, and I think the steering committee, not everything. You cannot have so many meetings, right? But for researchers, say there's a 2-hour, and really understand what they can add to the process.
Any thoughts from the group?
It might be an interesting exercise to meet with the Conservancy after we've had some initial public engagement and see how that meets what the demands of the public is coming in. If there's a strong environmental element coming in, then maybe we can use it. I'm just wondering, maybe the process is get some public engagement first and then see how that information would fit with that instead. If it's to be a true public engagement-led process, instead of having one group maybe set.
Well, I got 2 components out of that. One, maybe McElhaney does get involved in just reaching out or organizing the information sharing. It sounds like perhaps the Conservancy has data that can be integrated into our mapping. So to me, that's step 1. How we engage them, I'm still a suggestion of a 2-hour presentation session. I'm not sure if a 2-hour presentation session is necessary, but I kind of like Melanie's idea that let's collect data that can be then shared and utilized in terms of the outreach process. And then as we move forward with digesting all that information, then perhaps consideration for what the Conservancy can offer as part of the decision process.
I think there's 2 components to it. I agree with both of you, but the technical side of things, what the Conservancy has built, and full disclosure, I'm a member of the Conservancy, shouldn't matter, but the technical side could inform the McElhaney and support the McElhaney process. And then the discussion about neighborhoods and that sort of thing, Natural neighborhoods. My only concern is that if we agree to meet with the Conservancy about that, then we may also be setting ourselves up for meeting with every other group. And so if we're open to any of that, we need to develop a criteria rather than just hearing a good idea and saying yes. So I think the two of you answer both of those concerns. Or both of those areas, that the technical data can go to McElhenney at any point. And then as our process evolves, we can see whether we need to go to the Conservancy or any other group and ask for information or participation. I think there is somebody else that was asking to speak.
Jim's hand was up and then he brought it down.
Sorry, whose was?
Jim's hand was up.
Okay.
He may still be.
Jim, do you have some?
Sure. I'll just, basically, I
And
think
then
I'm basically agreeing with you, David. I was kind of saying what I was going to make the same point that if they're on our list as someone we want to actively engage with, does this make it different? And sorry for the lawnmowers in the background.
Thanks, Jim, and we can't hear the lawnmower. Allison.
Two things, I guess. One is the municipality does have a memorandum of understanding with the Conservancy. And it sort of involves consulting with them on conservation measures and things like that. So I think that would
Different
make
status.
them different
Yeah.
status.
Great.
And the mapping, they've got the existing mapping, and I'm quite sure our existing mapping doesn't pick up the last couple of Conservancy acquisitions.
Hmm.
Like there's one up the hill here in Dorman Road, and then two out at the last one out at Cape Roger Curtis. So that's just an update. And they may also have a list of things that might be worthy of conservation or further things. So I think because of that memorandum of understanding, we can naturally consult with them, and they've got tons of data. Yeah, that,
Danielle, you were in the meeting. Do you have any comments about the presentation itself? Yeah, abilities.
I mean, I think so. When in terms of like the process, like when we met, I was reassuring them that like the Conservancy, anytime we would make a list of people we want to consult with, the Conservancy is near the top of that list. And that we would definitely, as the committee, be reaching out to them through the process. So yeah, for me, I think it's the same question in terms of like, oh, yeah, it was a great presentation watching some of the mapping they've done in terms of like where there are more species on bone, and so sort of highlighting, okay, what are areas to prioritize connections for or protections for. But yeah, at the same time, sort of wanting to know that we have like a process we're going to follow and to be consistent with it and say, okay, if we have an engagement plan that says we're going to reach out to groups, then we can reach out to groups we know we're sort of ticking the boxes in the process in a way that's defensible, I think is good.
And because you're working with the McElhenney people and have seen this information, is it possible to essentially use your exposure to it so that you can say at some point, I know it would help with this, or maybe you want to look at this to the consultants rather than to the steering committee? Is that helpful?
Maybe.
That's fine.
I'm still trying to wrap my mind around it. Maybe part of my challenge is not having that clear understanding of the information that the Conservancy has, but there are two elements. One is understanding the information that they can provide. It's probably more of an explanation of the data sets that they can offer. But in terms of consultation, I would imagine, correct if I'm wrong, that the Conservancy bank of land has already sterilized it from being developable. Consultation process would be, are there other lands that the Conservancy is targeting, and recommends or suggests is more sensitive and worthy of protection. Is that what the consultant's part of it would be?
I think so. Like some of their mapping is identifying, not so much environmentally sensitive areas, although kind of, but more it's like areas that are like important for biodiversity, say. And I know one of the things in the meeting, I was saying, I would look for is things like, do they have like recommendations that would come into our policies? If it's like, well, the goal is, there's protected land here and here, and our policies, we actually seek like corridors connection between the two or something, or like guidance with the idea, like if we have a rezoning for a large parcel and we're saying, well, we want to protect land of it, is their mapping detailed enough that would say, oh, look, if this owner of this 40-acre parcel came and we know we want to protect something of it, it would give guidance to say, this is where the protection should be. The most valuable should be here. And then we could actually have it in our OCP. And then if somebody comes to rezone, we say, great, we have a plan that this is what we want to protect, and this is where the development can take place.
Okay. So it is the idea that this fact-based is research. The idea is not that it become part of the planning process, right? That it would be at arm's length. Now, an individual, maybe like Bob Turner, can maybe do something as an individual, but not. You have to see the distinction. It's a source of information, but I think it changes the way you look at the island. It's really major, and you can hear how important it is to the planning department, and it's about land use. And I give you one example. Everybody will think that everything that's green and that's forested is the most natural diverse. If you look at the mapping, you conclude that's not the case at all. You know what I mean? So it's like it changes your mindset. So I think that if what Alison is saying, that we are honestly at some kind of priority list, it's different than a lot of these organizations that have a self-interest for one specific goal. And they may take up time, but if the Conservancy with their presentation takes up time, that has major impact on land use.
But that's why I was suggesting if we had the public consultation, if we start to see feedback from the community say, oh, we want to preserve green spaces, then we know that that's something to go explore and go and look at their data sets.
And who has the data on green
To
space?
support moving forward with what we're getting back. If someone says, oh, we really want to see, I know the preservation of frogs, whatever, right? That we would know that that's something to go explore, but if we need the feedback from the community, that's my thought of what are people's priorities?
Yeah, but Melanie, the way McElhaney starts the review, right? He says there is already consensus what Rhode Islanders think about the environment. I don't think that's the case. There's 140 or so, like the majority of recommendations in the existing OCP affect the environment. They made a list of it.
Yeah.
Right. So and then they say because there is already consensus, and this is only an update of the OCP, we don't have to pay as much attention to it. I don't think that's correct at all. I think this is a major aspect. And if the community, the priority is still the environment,
yes,
vastly, then we should spend a lot of energy and focus on that.
I agree. I think I'm in agreement with that, but I think getting, if I would like to sort of see where, I don't know, that's my thought. I do like this idea of pairing the term natural communities with the built, because I think a lot of us struggle with, we know we live in a sort of a suburban-y kind of environment, but we want to preserve the nature of that. So I think coupling those two terms might help with discussion where we're always at sort of loggerheads, I think internally, right? We know we live, like I'm thinking like the Miller's Land and those really sort of built up areas, but if we also take into account that within the suburban setting, we live in a natural neighborhood, that's an interesting topic.
Adam has been waiting very patiently. Over to you, Mr. Louie.
Thank you, David. I think it's a great report and appreciate all the points that you've all made here. One thing that I might say is Fritz, earlier you said that the Conservancy is apolitical. And I think that we should be really careful about how we utilize their work and how we position it within our process, because not that I don't think the environment, like obviously it's a very important thing in the community. But any sort of consideration that we use in terms of our planning process kind of becomes political. And so I think we should just, like, I don't know exactly what that means, but like I think we need to be careful about how we utilize and their work and how we bring it into our process, because it has a perspective, and it comes from a certain place. And so I think we need to be mindful of that.
So what it sounds like is that there may be a need and a desire for that consultation, but that we need to follow our process and look to staff and to the McElhenney group to see what they advise, if there's data they need, if there's another perspective that hasn't come through the engagement process. Is that a reasonable summary of where we are? I don't want to put words in anybody's mouth. Okay, I'm just mindful of the time. We were well ahead of schedule and now we're just about to run out of time for this item.
I think if I may.
Glenn, yeah.
Because I was kind of thinking the same thing, it's just mulling it over in my head of what Adam said. I think the difference is that that information should become a data set, just like anything else that influences people's opinions and suggestions, but to certainly not prematurely, if ever, make it a conservancy platform.
Yeah.
Right? That's what it shouldn't be.
I am involved in a nonprofit group who, when they heard I was part of this group, said, "Oh, good, now you can argue on our behalf." I said, "Actually, now I really can't." But no, I think that's a good point, Glenn. Thank you. So because we have minutes and that's all been captured, that's wonderful. I think we should move on. Still engaging with Sandra and Victoria, but moving on to the engagement and communication plan update. Sorry, wrong one. To the baseline findings report.
Sorry, just for the minutes, there was mention of a criteria. Is that already included in the engagement plan or is that an action? That's part of your planning process, Sandra.
Yeah, I would hope that it's already there.
I'm sorry, part of it's cutting out. I just missed the beginning of the question.
I think it's not a great question. Let's move on.
We might ask it offline after we have a look at the minutes. But so now we're on to 5.2, which is the baseline findings report, which is Sandra and Victoria again.
Thank you. So since the January meeting, our team also updated the baseline findings report with some of the feedback that we received from your group. And the updated report was attached to today's meeting agenda, but I'll just spend a few minutes just highlighting some of the changes that have been made so that you know what you're looking at when you review that report. So I will share my screen again. We'll zoom in. So there have been several minor changes made to the report, especially to the infrastructure memo portion. And a lot of the changes were very minor in nature, just grammatical things as we evolved from the draft. But the primary change to the infrastructure portion of the report was the addition of this table 4, which is covers a summary of existing and future growth projections. So this table provides the number of existing water connections for Snug Cove and Eagle Cliff, Tunstall Bay, Cowan Point, Blue Water Park, King Edward Bay, and Bowen Bay, as well as the capacity for future connections in each of these areas. This table is helpful because it demonstrates where there is capacity in the water system for more housing. So our infrastructure team found that Snug Cove has the most capacity in the water system right now, with a potential for 639 future connections. King Edward Bay has capacity for 42 future connections, and Blue Water Park has capacity for 32. Tunstall Bay has capacity for 25, and Bowen Bay has capacity for 1. Cowan Point capacity is noted as unknown on this table, but it's also mentioned that it can be supported by Josephine Lake. So that's the reason why it's noted as an unknown capacity right now.
What page is that?
This is on page 60 of the PDF.
60?
If you're looking at it's one of the attachments to the report. It's called the Infrastructure Review Memo. So the number that you'll see at the bottom of the attachment is page 14.
Victoria, can we interrupt for a second? We have questions from Glenn.
Sure.
First of all, from Glenn.
Yeah. I have not had a chance to review it, but we'll need to be careful of the wording within that, because what those numbers are based on current zoning. They were projections around that influence the capacity assessments of the system. It's not necessarily saying that there is capacity for that growth, but that's what the assessment was based on. And it's not to say that those numbers can't be different. It's just recognizing that if those numbers become different, then the assessment of the system would have to be updated. So I'll be interested to see the specific wording that's been used in your report.
Can I ask a question? I'm confused. Existing is the existing number of connection. Oh, okay, so the 639 added to the 1070 becomes
Correct.
total, yeah.
This is
Yeah.
what would the zoning bylaw, and we spent some time working with Daniel and his team too, and just anticipating, looking into the future.
I've noted that.
Question.
Sorry, Victoria, carry your comment.
I've noted that comment down.
Thank you.
Does the Cove Bay and Eagle Cliff system also include Valhalla?
Yeah.
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 That should be included as well
In the description.
The Cove Bay is more than Snug Cove, right?
Yeah. the Cove-
So
the Cove
why
Bay
put
is-
Snug Cove under Cove Bay? I think it would be just delete Snug Cove.
Yeah.
And because if people go and look at the map, they'll see the map of Cove Bay and they'll see the map of Eagle Cliff systems. Because it's by putting Snug Cove underneath Cove Bay, I think you're raising the question Melanie just asked about
Yeah.
what all the other users on Cove Bay water system. And then with Cowan Point, there's the Cowan Point utility, and then there's all the rest of us that draw from Josephine Lake.
Mhm.
So I think you have to put Cowan Point utility in there, not,
Not just California.
yeah.
Anybody else? Questions or comments?
And there's a typo under source for opposite Cowan Point. You've missed the W off review.
Or they want to wake it up.
I've
So-
got all sorts of those. I'll send them separately.
Victoria, back to you. Or was that the end?
No, I will, I'll
Yeah.
just briefly touch on a couple more things here. I've noted all of that down for our team to make those changes. So the next section that we added, just a small part to, is the communications and engagement memo attachment. So that's PDF page 76 is where we made a change. And we just added a small section here on engaging with local First Nations. So the memo now notes that the project team will support the Bowen Island municipality staff by providing project information and engagement findings for staff to share with the Squamish Nation as they invite participation and input into the process. So we don't know exactly what that process of inviting the Squamish Nation will look like quite yet, but we've noted that McElhaney will support staff through their outreach and provide all project materials as needed.
Great.
And the final point for this, oh, sorry, was there a comment?
Please go ahead.
Okay. There was also mentioned at the last meeting that transportation was missing from the baseline findings report. So our transportation team is working on that. We completely agree that should be included in this report. They haven't completed their memo yet, so we expect to be able to share that addition to the report by the March OCPSC meeting.
Okay, thank you, Victoria. The agenda has Sandra speaking to this as well, but we're complete, are we?
We're complete.
Great, thank you.
Staff,
Please, Allison.
is this intended to now be a public document? Or is it just a document that's being given to the committee and it's public to the extent that it's in our agenda package, but is it actually going to be part of the website that has all the documents and information for the community?
As a draft, would it typically be?
Well, once it's
Yeah.
finished, I mean, when we get to a final edition, is it going to be, I'm assuming we're going to have a OCP website or a specific section on the OCP on the Muni website. So is this going to be one of the documents that will be on that website once it's finalized?
How,
Sandra's gonna answer that.
yeah,
Oh, I can speak to that. So we're happy to have documentation be publicly accessible and centralized on a website. And that really comes down to design. So we want to make sure that it takes a lot of effort to get someone to go to a website. So we want to make sure that when they arrive there, that the most important things we want them and need them to know are upfront so that they can engage with those first. So this would be a document that we might include in an additional information section or a resources section. It's good background reading to help people understand the process, but it's not a critical, big important document, if you will, that needs to be upfront. But I think we're happy to include it once it's finalized.
Well, my question was, were you intending to include it, or are you waiting for input on us as to whether it gets included or not?
I think our intention would be to include it as part of the project documentation, but we're open to feedback on that.
No, I was just wanting to clarify what the intention ultimately was with the document.
seems logical to have it as supporting,
Yeah.
as a document supporting the MCP. Are there other questions or comments before we move on? Not seeing anything in Zoom. Nothing in the room. Thank you very much, Sandra and Victoria. Oh, yep.
Adam says might be that there's a public version that omits sensitive information.
Some of the comments about water supply and not adequate water mains and all that sort of stuff is just going to have people.
Okay.
Yeah.
We can go to that.
Okay. Next up on the agenda is new business. And this is a placeholder, but is there any new business that needs to be raised at this time?
You have James down for next.
Yeah, and James and I have communicated about that.
Sorry.
Seeing none, we can move on to the information items, and I have to.
Can we talk about next steps though? So we're not.
Yes, somehow I went straight to new business. You're right. Next steps. So we're talking about next meeting dates, engagement, that sort of thing. What have we got?
I mean, I guess one question was for Sandra, just in terms of your anticipated timings. We put in a tentative proposed next meeting date, but it'd be nice to check in with McElhaney with, yeah, what you anticipate for timelines, and so when we should be thinking to meet again.
Yeah, I saw that. I think there was a target of April 2nd, if I'm not mistaken. I think that's reasonable now. We will look for feedback on the C&E plan, the communications and engagement plan, and then we might need to adjust from there, but I think that's a reasonable timeline to work with for now. For next
Okay,
meeting.
so like at the next meeting in that time, then that's what the committee will be, that's what we'll be focusing on, is actual, the plan itself.
Yeah, you bet.
Is there anything else that we need to add into next steps? We should confirm our next meeting date.
So we have one member who can appear in person on a Wednesday. I think we started with Mondays and then we sort of slid into Tuesdays. I think due to statutory holidays, I'm wondering if this Wednesday, April 2nd can work for people.
Alex.
Oh, no.
It works for you? Thank
Yeah, I was
you.
consenting.
It not work for anybody. There you go.
And because, yeah, if we're looking at Wednesday instead of Tuesday, does that work better for people? Does it work better for some, or does it work less well for others, I guess? Speech.
I can work around it, but
Yeah, I can make it work too.
Tuesdays and Thursdays, I've got morning commitments.
Good.
Okay, I'm getting online. Can't do Wednesdays, says Adam, office day. All these people with their amazing
I prefer Wednesday,
lives, you prefer Wednesday.
Tuesday.
Okay, maybe we'll take this offline then.
Yeah, we could send out a
Yeah.
doodle poll or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, great.
If we did it right around lunchtime, would that work for that?
Here. Melanie's this time better. We're checking in work. We can't do this.
Yeah, let's do it off.
Yeah, sorry.
That'll be roughly the timeline of what is probably that week or.
First week of April. Yeah, great. Okay. Any other next steps to be discussed? Any other business? Very nice.
Oh, so if I've got a bunch of questions on that document, who do I send them to? Daniel, and then you can forward them?
Yeah. And same with anyone has questions on any of the documents, you can send to me and I can filter them back.
Thanks. I feel like I haven't been paying attention. Information items, are we discussing
No.
information items? They're just attached.
Yeah, so information items, I just will go through council minutes and find anything either that I think you guys want to know or council has said that you should know. And also I keep the strategic plan linked there as standing items. We don't lose track of the vision.
Yeah. The Squamish Nation climate strategy looked really interesting. I was glad you attached that. Thank you.
Adding to that Squamish Nation one, so I then went into town the next day or whatever, after our last meeting, picked up a North Shore News. And the front page was their development plans, which is also equally interesting reading for the amount of development that's going, and that is on their website. Amount of development they've got planned for Squamish and North Van and down, and I think town is pretty well because of what's already going on, but huge amount of development along Marine Drive and everything.
Okay. Next item number 8 is our question period, opportunity for members of the public, of which we have none. So I think we can, unless I've missed something in Zoom.
Nobody in the
No.
public that I can see.
Item 9 is our next meeting, which we have agreed is going to be settled offline, but should be
Don't
in
start
that
talking about
first
it.
week of April. Item 10 is adjournment. Unless there are any objections, we need a motion to adjourn that nobody will oppose. Thank you, Glenn. Carried unanimously.
Where the meetings are.
Yeah, thank you, everybody, for being here. And thank you so much to Sandra and Victoria.